A relationship is like a dance. It takes two to tango. Want to have healthy and successful relationships filled with passion, fun, and harmony? Hi, and welcome to the Two to Tango Show with Linda Sutton, a podcast that explores how we can improve your relationships with God, yourself, your intimate partners, and the community. Tune in and learn actionable insights and tips you can use to improve your relationships. The battle of the sexes ends here. Join Linda Sutton today and take your relationships to a whole new level while having fun every step of the way.
Welcome to the Two to Tango Show, where our role and our goal is to help you with all of your relationships, from your relationship with God and self, intimate partner and family, community, nature, and nations. Hi, I am your host and usually doing the most, Linda Sutton, and today we are going to be talking about what is trust. And we'll be talking about trust through the lens of Tango. Now, normally when we think of trust, we definitely think about trust in relationships. And so communication and trust are usually areas in relationships, common areas, especially in intimate relationships where there is a breakdown. And so we're definitely going to talk about the relationship between trust as it relates to relationships in Tango. But in specifically in Tango, there are some very physical ways that the idea of trust and the nature of trust shows up and plays out. So this is pretty exciting and interesting. In fact, this is probably one of the lessons that gentlemen get real quick, fast, in a hurry when it relates to the nature of the dance. One of my favorite things to do is to work with married couples, and I love working with couples. And in the past year, right before the pandemic occurred, I did a series of couples tangos date nights. So that's something that I do frequently, which is usually there might be couples ministries or couples groups or clubs that do activities, married couples groups. And they want to do an activity together. And so we'll do a date night, a tango date night, where they get a crash course in tango, learn a new skill together, and get some new insights for their relationship and their marriage. And I remember the latest set that I did, and it's always fascinating to me to see the ladies and the gentlemen not only get the insights, new insights, about themselves through the dance, but for them to immediately understand how those dynamics are showing up in their relationship. And that is one of my favorite parts of training and teaching, is to see people come into that awareness on their own. So in the area of trust and communication, there are specific exercises that help gentlemen and ladies understand more than just in an abstract way what it means to trust someone and what it means to entrust someone with something. So let's start, as we always do at the top of my sessions and our episodes, is to talk about, well, what is trust and what is interest, so that we make sure that we're all on the same page. And to trust is to have a firm, not just any kind of belief, but a firm belief in the reliability, the truth, the ability or strength of someone or something. Now that is a mouthful. So what trust is a firm belief. So you have a firm belief in the reliability, the truth, the ability, and the strength of someone or something. So that's what trust is. You're believing very firmly, you have a confidence in your belief that something is reliable, that it is true, that it is strong, that the ability that you understand it to have is there. Like that is what trust is. Now, to entrust someone is to assign the responsibility for something or someone to a person. So you entrusting is the assignment of a responsibility, or is to give the protection of something. So to give in the care or protection of someone. So you're taking something and you're putting it in the care or protection of someone. That is what it means to entrust someone. So this is really, really important because there are already some keys and some clues as it relates to trust and entrusting. And we can already begin to get some insights into where trust breaks down and why it breaks down. So we're going to kind of talk in this episode in kind of three different stages and categories. We're going to talk about from a Tango perspective, from the lens of Tango, how trust is gained. The second part, which is how trust is maintained. And then the third part is how is trust regained when and if it is broken. And so we're going to talk about that. So I want to start about kind of something that you want to remember. And like I said, that in Tango, principles are the rules that govern the roles. So as it relates to trust in Tango, when there is trust, they will entrust. Okay. So when there is trust, when there is a belief in the reliability of a person or a thing, then they will entrust. Then you will be comfortable and confident in putting something or someone in the care or protection of another. Care, protection. These are key things that are an important part of the dance of Tango. And so without trust, then a person won't feel comfortable with putting themselves in your care or putting themselves under your protection. So when there is trust, they will entrust. The amount of, let's start in the process of how trust is gained in Tango. And there is a very specific process that a follower goes through to determine whether or not they trust their partner, and then to the degree, what is the degree to which they will trust their partner? Because the degree to which they trust their partner will also determine the degree to which they will entrust themselves to the care and protection of their partner. So that is very, very important because there is a process that a follower goes through, a very, very physical process, and also an energetic and spiritual process that they go to determine whether, yes, they meet the threshold of trust. And then the second, which is the degree of trust that they will have in that person. So the amount of trust that is granted at the beginning of the relationship or the dance is based on the initial impression and intuition. So I said that the degrees, the first threshold is whether or not trust will be granted at all. And so that's the initial impression. So from the observation of that person in the dance space, they're determining whether or not they feel like that person is trustworthy at all by observing their behavior and their interaction with others. Now, the degree of trust that they put into a new dance partner is a function of their intuition. So there is an energetic reading of a potential partner that a woman or a follower goes through. They can pick up on their vibe, and it's really, really important. And it usually is very, very natural for the follower to kind of follow her instincts on that. She will tend to get an instinctual feeling or sense of whether or not she trusts him, and then from her observation, from a sense, and then her intuition, her instincts will determine the degree to which she trusts him. And that will show up in the type of embrace that she chooses. So, based on her instincts, her intuition, her reading of his energy up front, then the quote unquote 3 degrees of trust or level of trust that exists, at least in the tango, in the form of the embraces, will show up. So a kind of a low level of trust will show up in open embrace. A greater level of trust will result in kind of a salon style embrace. Um, a more confident level of trust will result in the apilado or chest to chest. And then, quite frankly, a fourth level of embrace we haven't talked about because it's usually reserved for advanced and professional dancers is what we call liquid or fluid embrace, where literally while you're dancing, you go through all 3 different types of embraces from one extreme to the next. Is usually extremely dynamic, is usually reserved for professionals or very advanced dancers who can manage that change of embrace, but an extreme level of trust would result in what we would call a more liquid embrace. And that, like I said, that's usually reserved for those who are in partnership with one another, literally as dance partners, almost exclusively, and training together as professionals. So that is how trust is gained by observing how you interact with others, how you conduct yourself, and then also that coupled with kind of an instinct, an intuitive feeling of you initially. That is how trust is gained. Trust is also granted when there is congruence. So, incongruence means that you see a synergy between a person's word and their deeds, or their mind, body, and soul. Some people say, and when I say word, that word can be spoken or unspoken. But basically, you are who you say you are. How you're showing up is consistent. The way that you're showing up, the way that you're conducting yourself, the way that you're speaking, what you say you're about, all those things, a person is observing that those things are in sync with one another. And so that congruence that they see within you determines whether or not the trust is granted. So, for example, if they see you talking about being careful and talking about how you respect and have care for the ladies and safety and things like that in your conversation, and they see that same level of care on the dance floor, then there's a congruence between what you're saying about your philosophy or your ideology as it relates to the dance and how you're actually executing it on the floor and how your interaction, the level of care that you're taking, the thoughtfulness, the taking her thoughts into consideration, putting her safety first. All of these things will show up in terms of how trust is granted upfront. Now, in terms of how trust is gained and then transitioning to how trust is maintained, is that usually right out of the gate, trust will require some testing. So when a woman is determining the level to which degree to which she trusts you, and therefore the degree to which she will entrust the care of herself, the protection of her safety in you, she will usually do some sort of test. And this is in Tango something that is common and the gentlemen expect. So the gentlemen, at least when I was coming up through the ranks, the gentlemen expected that the women would test them up front to see if they were ready for what they were asking. When a man asks a woman to dance, inherent in his invitation is him saying to her that he understands that he is asking her to trust him and to entrust him with her care and her well-being. He understands that when he asks her to dance, that he is a part of that is the responsibility for keeping her safe and supporting her, and that he is able to and equipped to keep her safe and to support the fullness of her. he is able to support all of who she is. And then from a physical standpoint, that is in the form of her weight and all of the process that she will go through in order to get more and more comfortable with him. So a woman tests the man embrace usually in two ways. Um, and it usually is an attempt to be unexpected so that she can see his reaction. She usually does it in an unexpected way in order to test his reaction. And usually she will test the left side of his embrace. So if you're getting a chance to watch the video, or I encourage you to go to the episode video, the blog post for this particular episode, so you can see the video. The left side of the dance is where the man supports the woman's hand. And so she will either test it there, or she will test it in terms of the amount of weight that she gives to his body. So she will either, when she takes the hand that he offers her, she will put an enormous amount of weight on that quickly to see how responsive he is to her sudden increase or her suddenly giving him his weight, or she will give her weight to him in terms of her physical body in a very rapid fashion quickly to see if he is able to support her. And how he responds to her lets her know how much she can trust him in the beginning, from the outset, and kind of sets the stage for how the trust will be maintained. So when she does this, this is what she's gauging, so that you'll know, because in Tango, she is going to test him. Gentlemen, if you want your lady to trust you, you must expect that she is going to test you out of the gate to determine whether or not she should trust you and how much she should trust you and what she should trust you with. So in the dance of Tango, what she is testing, or these are the questions that she's answering. Does he stumble under the weight of her? Is he prepared to receive her weight or not? Does he adjust or readjust quickly? Does he drop her or allow her to fall, which would be the ultimate violation? Is he prepared for what he asked for? He asked her to dance, so that involves him being able to support her and handle the full weight of her out of the gate. By inviting her, he is asking her to surrender to his lead and is suggesting through his invitation that he can handle what he is asking for. So what she is looking for is a demonstration of that, because not only does it demonstrate his ability to fulfill that role, but it also is a reflection of and a mark of his readiness and maturity. Okay, because a gentleman that asks for something but doesn't understand the significance of what he's asking for will not be equipped to handle all that comes with that. And so what she's saying is like, okay, you saying that you got me. You saying that you got this and you can handle this, like you got this, I got this. And you see that in relationships, kind of as an aside, where a woman will express kind of a little bit of hesitation or concern to trust him with something or some part of herself or some situation. She's like, I don't know. You sure you got this? And then the gentleman is like, insistent, like, I got this. No, what? Trust me. I mean, you don't trust me? What? I got this. Like, I got this. I can handle this. And then if he demonstrates that he doesn't got this, then guess what? What that does is that set the stage for less trust in the future rather than more trust in the future. So it's important because that is really the dynamic that you're seeing show up in the dance that will extend to other areas of their interaction. And so when a gentleman is asking a woman to dance, what he is saying is, I got this. And so she, in her reactions to him, she's going through this process of determining, okay, he's saying he got this, but do he really got this? I don't know if he can handle all of me. He's saying he can handle all of who I am. He's saying he can handle the full weight of me. He's saying that he is prepared to take on all that comes with me. But can he demonstrate that? And so I'm sure you can start to see this clear on and off the dance floor parallel. And I love that because you clearly see that when you watch couples interact with each other, especially married couples, because then gentlemen and ladies get to see that they get to see in real time, physically, a conversation that they're often having at their homes, where the lady is expressing kind of a little bit of hesitation in the amount of trust that she's giving him, in part because she's experienced perhaps spaces where he said he had it and he didn't really have it. And so she's in the space of now questioning, both either verbally or non-verbally, are you clear about what it is that you're saying that you have the capacity to take on? You're saying that you have the capacity to take this on. Are you clear about what it is you're saying that you're able to do? In addition to, are you able to do it? Like, it's not just, are you able to do it? Do you understand the fullness of what you're asking us to trust you with? What you're asking us to entrust you with? Are you really sure that you understand what that means? What all of that means? That's what's going on here. And so once again, in terms of moving into phase 2, which is how trust is maintained, the initial test plus these ongoing tests will either deepen the amount of trust that a lady has in a gentleman, or weaken the amount of trust that she has in a gentleman. So she will be constantly in this state of testing, because what she's doing is she's going through degrees of trust, degrees of entrusting. So she's either going to trust him more as he demonstrates that he has the capacity to be trusted with more. When he demonstrates his reliability, his consistency, his ability, as we talked about at trust, then she will put more under his care and protection. However, when a gentleman is inconsistent, when he is unreliable, when his strength is wavering, when his truth is wavering, then she will trust him less, and her trust in him will weaken over time. Now, the ultimate violation is when trust is broken. And that is a whole different dynamic. So when a gentleman demonstrates in this tango, in this dance, that either he is unreliable, he's not being truthful, or his ability and strength is questionable, then trust becomes broken. And when that trust is broken, either through observation, experience, or inconsistency, then you will see the need for trust to be regained. So trust is not a given. And I think that should go without saying, but sometimes trust, like respect, people think is a given. There is a level of respect and there is a level of trust that is often granted as a courtesy just off of the initial interaction. However, true trust in a person is actually a reward and a reputation that is earned through the consistent demonstration of trustworthiness. So someone may offer you an initial measure of trust or an initial measure of respect just by nature of the initial interaction and enough evidence to at least grant you that. However, true trust is a function of consistently demonstrating that you're worthy of not only the initial trust that you were given, but greater measures of it subsequently. So your performance will determine the level of trust that you gain and the level of trust that you maintain. So greater trust means that you're also not only getting someone's giving you greater trust and greater confidence of your ability to care, but they also are often giving you greater access to something or someone, greater availability to more of you, whether in terms of your leadership, whether in terms of your guidance, whether in terms of your presence. So greater trust often offers greater access and greater availability to things. And so once again, the consistency, the reliability is the key. The congruency is the key to once trust is gained, to trust being maintained. In the dance, the way that trust is broken is usually when the woman is injured or she gets hurt in some way, usually physically, but sometimes emotionally. Sometimes emotionally, like she felt safe that you weren't going to do something inappropriate, and perhaps you did. Perhaps you crossed a line or a boundary that she set. Perhaps she got hurt, like you ran her into a chair or a table, or you allowed someone to step on her. Any of these ways that she could have gotten hurt, and so you have demonstrated that you have been unreliable in your protection of her, then that is where trust is broken. Of course, there are other ways that trust is broken in relationships, and you see that. And so, whether that is infidelity, not keeping one's word, not being consistent in keeping one's word, inconsistency of action, inconsistency of behavior, inconsistency of attitude. Any of these things can create a dissipation of trust and even broken trust. Now, in Tango, when trust is broken, oftentimes there is a physical element related to that broken trust in Tango. This is extremely important to understand, because when trust is broken in Tango, there is an energetic and muscle memory of the offense. So if the physical safety of a woman has been breached, there's been an accident or something, then there often is physical evidence of the injury. So not only is there physical evidence of the injury, but there is a muscle memory of the incident that gets connected to that injury, okay? Or the energetic experience of it, like the fear, the tension, the force of impact. All of these things are coming into play. And so when that happens, it not only causes a breaking of trust, but it causes oftentimes a break in the connection. Because what the woman has to do in response to that, now that she's been injured, is to go into self-protective mode. Whereas when she was in the embrace, she was allowing you to protect her. Once you demonstrate that you are not capable of doing that, or you have been unable to do that, then she goes into self-protection mode. And the way that she does that is by breaking, even if temporarily, the connection that you have, because a part of the connection is her transferring that responsibility or that power to protect her to you. And once you demonstrate that you are not capable of doing that, or demonstrate that you have not been able to do that, then she will withdraw that power, withdraw that connection, withdraw that assignment, and take it back onto herself. Now, once you break trust, and I know people understand that in relationships, but for whatever reason, they seem to miss it. Once you break trust, it is very, very difficult. It is very hard to regain and rebuild. It actually usually takes longer to rebuild broken trust than it did to create the trust in the first place. And the reason why is because now there is evidence associated with broken trust. Whereas prior to that trust being broken, there was no evidence of it. So you were able to rely on the initial measure of trust that was given, coupled with the experience of your consistency. So you started out with a strong foundation, that initial measure, you demonstrated success after success after success, consistency after consistency after consistency. And so it just strengthened that initial measure of trust. However, when you fracture it, now there is clear evidence of that breakage, of that fracture. And so now, whereas they didn't have that before, that reference point and that memory, they do have it now. And so there is going to take a great deal to overcome that broken trust, because now they have to convince themselves that it will not happen again in the face of evidence that it has happened. So here you have now evidence of broken trust, and you have to convince yourself that even though you're steering the memory of broken trust and perhaps the injury of broken trust, you were contending with it, you were healing from it, your body is literally going through the process of repairing from said injury, or the trepidation from the fear of the impact, or what have you. Now you've got to talk yourself and convince yourself that it will not happen again, even though you have evidence that it did happen. Okay, so that's why it takes longer. This is really important for the person who has broken the trust to understand that it's very difficult, sometimes depending on the level of violation, impossible sometimes, unfortunately, to rebuild that trust. Is really, really important, especially if there's repeated violations of trust. That comes into play. Because when you understand that there is a memory, a muscle memory, an energetic memory of it that becomes a part of the injury, or as I would like to say, if there's a scar that comes with the injury, the person has evidence that they're looking that it happened. They are holding the memory of it, not only in terms of memory, but they have physical evidence, like a scar, that the injury happened. And so they've got to face that. And those two things are in conflict with one another. Usually a person that is the offender, or the person who has broken trust, thinks that the offense should disappear at the speed at which they express their remorse or apology. So oftentimes what I experience and observe in terms of the trust as it relates to the dance is that the offender apologizes that the broken trust has occurred, the injury has occurred, or what have you, and they want it to go away as soon as they say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I feel horrible, like I cannot believe," whatever. And so then, and as they've expressed the apology, as they've expressed the remorse, now they're ready to move on, and they're ready for it to be over with, and they're ready to get back and get on to the next thing, and get back to normal, and get back to how things were, and it all be the same. And the reason that the offender needs to be mindful of that is because they are not dealing with the impact of the broken trust. They're not dealing with the injury of it. So the pain of the injury, the pain that has to go through the healing process, and then the pain of the recovery. So, for example, if a lady gets injured in the dance, let's say, and this has happened, where a gentleman kicked the lady that he was dancing with and literally knocked her whole toenail off. So there's the initial impact and the pain of having her toenail knocked off. And that is just like really like cringeworthy, tragic. So there's the initial impact of the pain of that and the bleeding of it. There is the process of the healing of the injury as it relates to it stopped bleeding and it stopped being in a place where she has to have her foot bandaged and can't put any pressure and weight on it and whatever. So there's the process of it healing. And then there's a process of recovery, which is her toenail actually growing back. And I know this is a very, very graphic example, but it's the best way that I can give the three examples. And then even then, her toenail may never grow back completely healed in the way that it did before, depending on her nature of her health and how the body heals and whatever, and whether or not it's re-injured because of shoes or what have you. So there's this longer process that someone who has been hurt or injured, or that trust has been broken, that they have to go through, that the offender doesn't have to go through. And so oftentimes the offender is wondering, why isn't this process going faster? Or why isn't it over? Because they're not having a sensitivity to the fact that there are phases that have to be gone through on the initial phase in terms of just the natural physical process or the emotional process of dealing with the offense. And then the secondary part, which is the constant argument that the person has to go through in terms of talking themselves into trust in the evidence in the face of broken trust. So that's really, really important. So in terms of how trust is regained, number one is to understand that this process is occurring for the person that the trust has been violated, whether, like I said, physically in the dance or whether emotionally in the dance, like that whatever that violation of trust is or was, that there is multi-phase process that the person who has experienced that broken trust has to go through. You cannot speed that up for them. You do not get to dictate how long it takes, just like you cannot dictate how long it takes for a wound to heal, and heal not only on the surface, but heal underneath. Equally, you do not get to dictate how long it requires for a person to recover completely from said offense. And if there is a scar that remains and a scar that never goes away, you have to understand that now that there's a new reality that they have to live with and deal with, that you too have to live with and deal with. Because whereas before there was no scar, if the scar doesn't necessarily heal and go completely away, or it takes much, much longer for that process, even if the injury is healed, but the scar tissue hasn't been replaced, you have to understand that that's a part of the process that you have to live through as you regain and rebuild the trust with a person. So this is a real dynamic. You see a lot of it on and off the dance floor. And it's not that the person who has experienced a broken trust doesn't have a desire. If they do have a desire and they've decided that they want to reconcile and they want to get over it, it does not change the fact that the process of healing, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, like spiritual, is still a multi-stage process. So there's a whole bunch, but I really want to go into that because that's a critical first phase that needs to be addressed. Trust in order to have connection and dance. And connection is something we'll talk about in a subsequent episode, because it's another characteristic that needs to be in place in order to have a successful dance. And of course, in order to have a successful relationship. So here on this episode of the Two Tango Show, we've been talking about what is trust through the lens of Tango, and how trust is gained, maintained, and regained. So hopefully you got a lot from that, and you can use that to kind of give you some new perspective in your relationships off the dance floor. Hi, this is Linda Sutton from the Two Tango Show, talking about trust. And as we say here on the Two Tango Show, it not only takes two to tango, but absolutely it takes you to tango. Ciao.
We have just concluded another moving episode of the Two to Tango Show with Linda Sutton. Did you enjoy the show? If so, head over to thetwototangoshow.com and discover a whole array of resources to help you spice up your relationship in every way. That's tangoshow.com. We would also like to hear from you, so don't forget to leave a review or feedback. Join us again next week for another entertaining and fun episode. Until then,